think he's a big Luis Suarez fan. Biting people.
Welcome to Super Bet Bros, guys. My name is Patrick.
I'm Josh.
And this is Seamus. Say hi, Seamus. Hi. Well, last week, amazing week for Josh. 5-0. Let's hear it, everybody.
Well, first of all, it feels a little tainted because half of it was Jahmyr Gibbs and the Lions. Won the bets, but at what cost? Lions, of course, losing to the Commanders. But a lot of it was based off research, just looking at matchups, based on prior games, what other teams with similar play styles were able to do, and factoring that together to figure out something.
Yeah, for me, I went 4-3. The Lions and the Texans really let me down. I mean, I think that's just the story of the week right there, is the Lions had a couple bets on them that really would have taken off, and the Texans, man, both games that, the referees stole that game from the Texans. There's no way that they didn't, and that one hurts. I feel like I should be duly compensated. I should be hiring a lawyer because I got personally screwed in that game, as did millions of other hardworking Americans who spend their money on this stupid sport. And then the Lions, let's take a moment to talk about the Lions game. First off, I hear right now, that was just so heartbreak, man. To go as far as they did, have such a good season, 15-2 with those only 2 losses coming against the Bills, who are still in it, and the Buccaneers, who are a great team. And if I think they had played 3 weeks later, they would have beat the Buccaneers. They were still figuring it out. One of the greatest seasons in Detroit sports history, in our lifetime at least. And then to come up short like that against a team that, hell, all of our bets, my bets at least had the Lions winning. You were smart enough not to throw that money line in there. I wasn't alone. That was the safe bet for most people, to take the Lions to win there. And what are your thoughts on it?
For me, really, I know a lot of people, they want to blame the play calling from Ben Johnson. They want to blame the turnovers, all that stuff. The reality is we saw the defensive injuries were going to catch up eventually. If it wasn't this week or this past week, it would be this week. It's just too much to overcome. A big thing for me is I don't even know the guy's first name. I just know I saw Norris out there on defense for the Lions, and I heard the announcer say, this is his second defensive snap of the season. When you have that happening in a playoff game, there's only so much you can do. And I know a lot of the other things were factors. Obviously, I'm not saying the play calling was great. I'm not saying the turnovers were an issue. There's only so much you can do with the injuries they had, and it was bound to catch up to them eventually. And it did.
All right. Well, first, we want to say that not only are these bets always sponsored by Perry. Gone but never forgotten. He's in Grand Rapids. He's not dead, but he's still deaf, so he can't hear the haters. Tunes you out completely. And it's always as well brought to you by NutriStack, our favorite sponsor, your all-in-one place to compare any type of fitness brand, pre-workout, protein bar, so that you know that your dollar goes further. Let's NutriStack some cash with these bets. And the first way that we plan on doing that is I have Eagles plus 6.5. Actually is a little bit of data that helps us out with this game. On spreads of 6.5 or less, and the total is 46 or higher, the favorite has won over 67% of the time in the last 5 years. That's over 2/3 of the time. I think that's a number that you just have to take. I think the Eagles are the stronger team. Saquon Barkley's going to go off. I don't think the Commanders can pull off magic twice. They can't pull that second rabbit out of the hat. I really think that they played out of the... I think they're a good team, but they weren't an amazing team. I don't think they can go into Philly and come away with a W. I love Jaden Daniels, love what he's doing. He's going to rush for a lot of yards. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think the Eagles are going to take home that W. Do you have any thoughts about that bet or the Eagles game before you get into your picks?
Yeah, something you said, lightning's not going to strike twice. Eagles defense isn't dead. There's no way they're putting up 45 points on that team. I think the Eagles are capable of putting up the same caliber offensive game that the Lions did, and I'm going to talk about that too. going into Saquon Barkley in my own picks.
Yeah. Well, I have another parlay with that game, and I'll pull up the phone here so I can get it exactly right. My memory isn't that good. So I have Saquon Barkley scoring an anytime touchdown, Jalen Hurts 150 plus passing yards, Jaden Daniels 175 plus, Jaden Daniels 40 yards rushing plus. I really think that if they have any chance, he's really going to have to get out of the pocket, extend plays, make that decision, do a little pump fake, try and get those extra yards, and I think he'll get 40. I'm pretty comfortable. He's averaging like 52 yards per game rushing on the season. So I think when they need him most, Jaden Daniels tries to deliver. So I think the key to them keeping it semi-close is Jaden Daniels going off, and that involves a lot of rushing yards. That's just part of his game. And then also, like your theory on Saquon Barkley, I have him going for 100 plus. Now that is plus 348, and I think that's a pretty good bet. We don't have a money line, it doesn't matter who wins, but I think regardless of the outcome, those have to happen. My next bet is a little bit tricky. I'm not going to be placing this now, I'm going to be placing it after the first game of championship weekend. If the Eagles cover, I will be placing Bills 1.5, okay? If the Eagles do not cover, I'll be placing the Chiefs minus 1.5. And you may ask, what's the discrepancy there? Vegas. Everyone thinks that the Eagles are going to win. If that happens, Vegas has got their money. They don't need to have the underdog, or they don't need to make back their money in the second game. I know it's a little bit conspiracy theory, but there's just too much money involved in my head. Now, most of the people are betting that the Bills are going to win this game. People think it's the Bills' year. Josh Allen, MVP, coming into Arrowhead. The Chiefs are not that good. The 15-2 Chiefs are not that good, or whatever they finish, some crazy inflated record. I think that is a very good time, especially with all the, come on. The refs stole the game from the Texans last week. Anyone that is saying otherwise is a fool. I think the Chiefs will get that W if the Eagles don't cover, and I will place that bet right before the game, and that's what you guys should follow along with if you're as crazy like I am. And then also this week, we have there's 2 games for college basketball that are plus 2.5 for the road dog. You know what we do? We hit those automatically. And then what I'm also considering doing, we're going to do it. We're going to bet every single NHL over 5.5. I think there's 7 total games that are over 5.5 this week. There might be 8. We're going to bet every single one. We're going to put a unit on every single one, and we'll report back next week. I don't really have any expectations along this. I really think it's a good bet. I know my record may suffer because of this, and I may have to claw some back, but we're just going to do some experimenting. Guys, this is how you get data. Sometimes you have to just toss it out. And yes, you could paper trade and just kind of follow along. And honestly, maybe I do recommend doing that. Don't actually place these bets if you don't have the stomach for it. Just follow along and see what happens. It'll be a great sample size, and we'll be able to see, okay, is that something that is continuing this year? Because year over year, betting over 5.5 goals has always been a strong play. So we're going to see if that continues, get a little data points, and go from there. Now, Josh, can you take us through your bets?
Yep. All right, so I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record from last week, and there's a big reason for it, and it's Washington won. Talked about last week with Jahmyr Gibbs, hit all 3 of my bets with him. Washington does not have a good run defense. I believe it was 27th in the league in the regular season. Great matchup for Gibbs. Really good matchup for Saquon. So I'm going Saquon, little on the fence here. The safe one is over 125. Because both his games, he's gone, I believe, off the top of my head, it was 146 and 150 against the Commanders in the 2 games they've played so far this year. You can get 150. The difference is 125 is at minus 125. 150 you can get at plus 175. So if you're feeling risky, it's just on that edge there. Don't hate it. I'm going to go with the safe one. I like to try to stay on the safe side usually. So I'm going over 125 on the ground for Saquon. A lot of it coming from last week. The way they've played this season just feels like a no-brainer to me.
Not to cut you off, sorry. That is the Saquon is the only person that you could say the safe bet is 125. That's crazy, but he's going to do it. Like, I genuinely think that is actually safe. He broke the narrative of you don't pay running backs. He is on the cheapest deal ever. He is the reason they're here. Continue.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And something else, did this last week with Saquon. I know I'm talking about Gibbs because he's the one who played the Commanders. Saquon had a monster game in the regular season against the Rams. Like 300 total yards, like 250 on the ground, something crazy. I don't have the number right in front of me. Comes out, I say he's going to have a great game against the Rams. We've seen it happen before. He plays straight into their weakness. Exactly what happens. So I'm going big on Saquon. We're going over 125 if you're really feeling it, over 150. Like you had, anytime touchdown, it's just inevitable. He's balled out against the Commanders. He had 2 or 3 per game, it felt like, earlier in the year. And then also, I have him being the leading rusher in the game, same way I had Gibbs last week. This one's minus 600, so it's kind of a shoe-in. But just the way he's been playing, I mean, it feels like anything you bet on him is just safe bet, gonna happen.
Oh, yeah. The key for Philadelphia winning, which we both think they will, is definitely Saquon. That's Saquad.
Yeah. And then my last one is another one I'm recycling from last week. It's the same line. I feel the same way. You said it yourself, Bills plus 1.5. This feels like the most complete Bills team down the stretch that we've seen in this back and forth between Allen and Mahomes. The offense has been running really well last few weeks of the regular season into the playoffs. The defense has had a couple slip-ups, but that's against the Rams. That's against the Lions. Those are high-powered offenses. Chiefs haven't really been that this year. They've been kind of like a grueling, we're going to battle it out, we're going to get that last play, and we're going to get that win. And I think because of that, there's been a lot of games where it really felt like they could have lost. And I think this is finally going to be the moment where the Bills just overpower them. They get their revenge, and they get that ticket to the Super Bowl that they have been desperately, desperately waiting for.
Yeah, man, they just have to get there. Josh Allen has not been in a Super Bowl yet. That's insane. He's like one of the greatest quarterbacks of this current young generation of guys that are, well, not so young anymore. He's kind of stepping into that now veteran status, but still hasn't been there. It took Peyton a long time to go. Maybe it feels like it's finally Josh's year. I'm really hoping so. I want to jump through a table. I know everyone else does. Let's go Bills, man. America's team.
Yes, sir.
Well, we all know that Labradors are hunting dogs, but Seamus goes hunting at the sports book, and he has a couple picks that he'd like to share. So far, he's undefeated, so let's see how he does this week. Whoever he attacks, because that is all that he is known for, is who he thinks is going to win the game. All right? I have the Communism Kills Commanders, and Josh has
the ELGES Eagles.
Eagles.
Just let me hear you all say ELGLES Eagles!
All right, Seamus. Who's your pick? Seamus. Maybe I'll...
Yeah. Seamus. Hello. Hi. Uh-oh.
Oh, we have a winner! Eagles, baby!
Let's go Birds!
We're going to move on to our second game, where I have Crybaby Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs.
And I got the Bills, America's team.
Seamus. Oh,
Going
and
with
I
the
guess that's the
Bills.
Bills.
Whoop it, bitch, I'm outside of some movie. Blue cheese, I swear.
Do you have any other bets?
And that's it for me. Bit of a
You
low week.
soft. Is that
Low
what you're
week.
gonna do? Is that what you're gonna do this whole year? Just do 1 or 2 bets?
I'm a big believer in bet what you're confident with. And
That's fair.
I think quality over quantity is going to be a big thing for me. I don't want to force in bets that I don't feel comfortable with just because I'm like, hey, I want to hit 6 bets this week, 7 bets this week. If I'm on the fence, I've found a lot of the time, whether it's bets, predictions, whatever it is, if I'm on the fence, I usually make the wrong decision. So I try to steer clear of that and just go with what I'm confident in. And this week, those are the 4 I'm confident in. Basketball, stuff like that, it's really hard to tell, especially days out, because you don't know who's going to play. You don't know who's going to
momentum is huge. Like, let's say a team goes on the road, wins by 15. It's so hard for them to follow that up. But when we're trying to bet a couple days out as we get these episodes out, it's so hard to know, especially with basketball. Momentum, even in NHL, they're so fast-paced. It's all about who kind of has that fire under their ass of who's going to win.
Yeah, and I think a big thing, you're talking about the short-form content. Once we start getting into that, that's when I'm going to start pushing some of that stuff. And when I can make those same-day bets and be like, hey, for today's or tonight's slot, this is what I'm feeling. So that way we have the data, especially with professional basketball, because 2-3 days out, you have no idea who the hell's going to suit up. You have no idea who's going to need a rest day, who's going to get hurt at practice. It seems like people are dropping like flies.
That's fair. I've always gone with the volume bets kind of strategy. Not just throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks, but kind of going with trying to look at as many games as possible efficiently. Not doing, it's hard to do a deep dive on every single one. And there are many games like NFL, football, especially, that I'll do more of a deep dive analysis on and try and get some data, look at some spreadsheets, and we get real nerdy. But I love looking at typically the last 5 years. I just think anything past that, the game evolves too fast. So my data set is typically the last 3 years. And then if that changed rapidly over the last 5 years, that'll sometime impact how I bet. And then it's a lot of against the spread, trying to figure out, because that's one of the easiest ways to beat Vegas. If you can have an edge picking your spreads in the NFL and college football, that's your best way to make money. So if you can look at some data and then pair that with just a little bit of a gut feeling, going with the hot team, that's kind of the way that you can make money. So I've always looked at trying to figure out more games. So it'll be very interesting to pair that. I always have a lot more bets, and Josh is a little bit more thoughtful and reserved. And you can follow both of us. You can follow one of us. We'll have our whole podcast record if you're following all of that. So far, we're all positive. My total record right now is, I think I'm 9-6 on this podcast. And Josh, what? You're 9-2?
9-2.
Yeah. So I mean, still doing pretty good. And Josh is going crazy. So maybe fade him for the next week because he can't keep that up. And I buy my stock, pump the stock right now. No rug pulls here. And thank you guys for checking us out. A lot of fun. We'll see you guys next week and in some TikTok videos while it's still here.
Fight!